Servus Freunde, my name is Jimmy Cage. Welcome to the second episode of reTake, where we look back at all kinds of different movies from the past. Today, I'm not reviewing one single movie, but instead suggest 5 classic films that might be a good introduction to the rich history of cinema. So where to start? I think that question is not that absurd when you try to discover older movies. When you're a beginner to film history, it's very easy to feel overwhelmed by the amount of options. Have you ever noticed the little logo at the end of a movie, the one with that giant number attached? It's from the Motion Picture Association of America, which was founded in 1922. They pretty much approve all official theatrical releases in the US, and in 1934 they started numbering them as well. And if you look at a recent film, you will see that we are at over 50,000 by now. When we go very low and assume a movie runs for 90 minutes, we are already at 75,000 hours, or 3,125 days. Or about 8.5 years straight without a single pause. Challenge accepted. When it comes to movies, it's hard enough to stay up to date, and that's already paying in mind that we are only talking about the English-speaking movies, which is quite unfair because there are a lot of great films from all around the globe. But for this video I've only chosen American ones as well, so I'm guilty of being ignorant too, at least for today. I picked these 5 films because I think they are very accessible, while also highlighting what can be so great about classics. When you like to get into old movies, you can't do any wrong by going with an Alfred Hitchcock film, and therefore my first pick is North by Northwest. Being released in 1959, it's one of his later ones. There are Hitchcock movies that I might rank even higher. Rear Window or Vertigo come to mind. But North by Northwest unites almost all of Hitchcock's unique trademarks and strength, and it's so fast-paced that it will be very easy to watch. Many people have reservations because sure, all the movies tend to be slower, and God forbid sometimes they are even in black and white. Well, this one isn't. It's fast, adventurous, full of suspense, beautifully shot, and simply super entertaining. Believe me, if you've never seen it, you will be very surprised of its entertainment value. It's a great introduction because it stars one of classic Hollywood's most beloved actors, Cary Grant, in a typical Hitchcock narrative. A normal, everyday man who coincidentally gets into a very dangerous situation he has to fight his way out again. It has an iconic score by Hitchcock's longtime collaborator Bernard Herrmann. It has a so-called MacGuffin, which is a storytelling device that's still being used today. Almost all Marvel movies use it. It's something everybody's after, and in its truest form, it's also completely interchangeable. It's needed to set a story in motion, and it's not that important what it actually is, like Infinity Stones, for example. Even if their characteristics get more important later down the road. In North by Northwest, the MacGuffin is simply secret information sought by the villain. By the way, the German title of that movie, Der unsichtbare Dritte, which translates to The Invisible Third Man. As I said, the movie was released in 1959, which was a great year in cinema. You got Otto Preminger's Anatomy of a Murder, Rio Bravo by Howard Hawks, Billy Wilder's Some Like It Hot, and the 11 Academy Award winner Ben-Hur, directed by William Wyler, and also French filmmaker François Truffaut's directorial debut, The 400 Blows. So there's at least one foreign film that I mention.
Look, do you know this man? Look! What happened?
He's got a knife! Look out!
Listen to me, I had nothing to do with this.
For my second pick, we only go 1 year further to 1960, when Billy Wilder's The Apartment was released. Billy Wilder is another director you almost can't go wrong with, and this movie brought him 3 Academy Awards in one single year. One for producing, one for directing, and one for writing. It stars Jack Lemmon and Shirley MacLaine. It's set during Christmas, and it's funny and also sad and heartwarming and melancholic, and it gives you that wonderful old New York City flavor. I watched it many times and it's always a pleasure to go back and see this little but quite unusual love story unfold. It's one of Wilder's most human movies, and if you enjoy it, there are so many more films to explore with him. Double Indemnity, Sunset Boulevard, Ace in the Hole, 1, 2, 3, or The Lost Weekend, to name just a few. My next pick is all about characters. Lots of characters. Shady, brutal, tragic, some even downright evil, but we all love them. Francis Ford Coppola's 1972 classic The Godfather. This is one of those very rare movies that fit the attribute perfect. It's a wonder how everything came together exactly the right way. This was one of my personal gateways to film history. When a friend borrowed me his tapes and urged me to watch this, it was something totally new to me. I must have been like 15 years old, and up until that point I mostly watched very action-oriented, plot-driven movies. To see something this filled with dozens and dozens of amazing characters, scenes, dialogues, it sucked me right in, and I'm sure it will have the same effect on almost everybody. And with Cary Grant or Jack Lemmon before, it's a great introduction to some of that era's biggest stars. Marlon Brando, Al Pacino, Robert Duvall, Diane Keaton, James Caan and more. It's also one of those cases where you can very easily argue that a movie adaptation is better than the novel. Because as a passionate lover of film, it always bothers me when people say a book is automatically always superior to its movie adaptation. My next pick is all about the love for cinema and a great classic to begin with, because it's not just only an amazing movie, but also one where you can learn a lot about Hollywood and the art of filmmaking. To be more precise, the transition from the silent era to sound. I'm talking about 1952's Du sollst mein Glücksstern sein, directed by Stanley Donen and Gene Kelly, Singing in the Rain.
Singing in the rain, just singing in the rain. What a glorious feeling, we're happy again. We'll walk down the lane with a happy refrain and singing, just singing in the rain.
Set in the late 1920s, this marvelous Technicolor work of art is one of the funniest comedies about filmmaking, and while it's already 65 years old, I promise you it will amaze you. Why? It's not because of the singing, but because of the incredible choreographed dance numbers. To perform at this level, you must be not only crazy talented, but also trained your whole life. There is a moment during the famous Make 'em Laugh number where Donald O'Connor is running up a wall and completing a somersault.
Make 'em laugh. Make 'em laugh. Make 'em laugh. Make 'em laugh. Make 'em laugh.
I've picked a Hitchcock movie, I've picked a Wilder one, so there's one more director in my all-time top 3, and that's Frank Capra. And even though Mr. Smith Goes to Washington is my favorite of his, I'm picking the Christmas classic It's a Wonderful Life.
What is it you want, Barry? What do you want? You want the moon? Just say the word and I'll throw a lasso around it and pull it down. Hey, that's a pretty good idea. I'll give you the moon, Barry.
I'll take it.
When you're from the US, there's a pretty good chance you know this movie by heart. Growing up in Germany, it was never that big here, and I saw it fairly late. But it's one of the reasons why I love classic films so much, and why James Stewart is my #1 favorite actor of all time. His performance as George Bailey ranks upon the most iconic ones in cinema.
What'd you stop it for?
I want you to take a good look at that face.
Who is it?
George Bailey.
Oh,
What I like most about it is that It's a Wonderful Life has that American spirit. It's what Capra does best. showing the good in human nature, showing the meaning of community, helping each other out, and how every single person has a lasting, important influence by the way he leads his life. Oh, and of course, it's romantic and funny and very, very nostalgic.
I've been nominated for membership in the National Geographic Society.
Is this the year you can't hear on? George Bailey, I'll love you till the day I die.
So these are my 5 picks. I know, no western, no war movie, no science fiction, no horror, but it's only a little start and just my suggestion of one of 100 possible ways to get into classic films. Please comment below, let me know which movies you would recommend for a beginner. And don't forget, we are all beginners in some way. One might be an expert when it comes to action from the 80s, another one might be on the French New Wave, and yet another one only watches Russ Meyer flicks. You can hit me up on Twitter, Facebook and Instagram simply at TheJimmyCage. And if you enjoyed this video, please give me a thumbs up, share, subscribe, whatever you like. And don't forget to hit the clock so we can rock.